Hello from Germany again. There's been a bit snow last weekend, but yeah, as you can see, most of it is already melting. So not so white Christmas in most parts of Germany after all. Also, I haven't been out taking photos for a few weeks, which is a bit frustrating. So today I just had to get out and explore a bit. And yeah, the objective today is not to take a photograph. It's more about scouting and looking for compositions which work when there's a bit more snow around, which hopefully is in a few weeks. And for this, I've come back to the Fairytale Forest, which I discovered a few weeks ago, so maybe you have seen the video. And this video here is now about the importance of scouting, and I'll now show you a few examples where scouting was essential to come away with the photos I was after, and I'll also explain why. I photographed this blazing sunset at Whiskey Bay last year while traveling along Australia's east coast. It was my second evening in Wilson's Promontory Park, and I had used the first evening to scout the beach for possible composition, checked where exactly the sun would go down, and for this case, very importantly, I made sure to find a route along the beach that wouldn't leave footprints in the sand in my composition. While I wasn't able to influence where other people would walk, I at least could make sure that I wouldn't leave footprints in my own composition. Then I even got lucky and there were no other people around, and I just had to climb around some rocks to keep my photo clean. So especially if you plan to photograph at a beach or wherever there's sandy terrain, it's very helpful to know what your composition will include, so you can make sure that you don't walk through it before taking your photo. This photo of Patenwander Beach in Cornwall was taken 2 years ago in spring. It was the last morning I had in the area, and I'd used the preceding days to explore the coast for viewpoints. And once I had found this viewpoint here, I took a few test photos to find out which compositions would work best, with the rocks in the foreground pointing the viewer into the frame. I did a complete setup with my tripod, balancing on some other rocks, so I would be able to set up in the pre-dawn darkness once the weather would improve. Figuring out this composition in the dark without prior scouting would have been impossible. I wouldn't have seen much of the foreground and would likely have missed this composition. So especially when photographing sunrises, scouting is essential. Here's another example where I found my composition the day before the shoot, and the next morning I knew exactly where to set up my tripod. Scouting for this photo involved a bit more work. The photo you see here I took in Tongariro National Park last year. I had to get up 2 a.m. and hike 11 kilometers to get to this spot. Without prior scouting, it would have been impossible to find it. I would likely have stopped up at Red Crater for a photo already, but the best view in my opinion was from this mountain. So 2 days earlier I already did the complete Tongariro crossing during day to scout for the perfect sunrise spot. The 22 kilometers for scouting alone were totally worth it. I knew exactly how long it would take me to get to the spot in the morning. I knew the exact route through the darkness, and I knew that the smell of sulfur was nothing to worry about. Especially when you plan a shoot in mountainous terrain, you should do scouting in daylight. It's a safety measure you should take to ensure that you don't injure yourself because you miss some crevice in the darkness, or you might even get lost if your photo location is a bit more remote. Surely it is not always possible to check out a spot a day earlier. Especially when traveling, you sometimes only have one chance to visit a location. But even then, scouting is possible. You just have to be on location early enough. Here's another example from Tongariro National Park. It shows the lower Tama Lake in evening light. It's a 9-kilometer hike to this spot, and I made sure to be on location 2 hours before sunset to be able to scout for compositions. Once I arrived, I first walked around and checked different possible viewpoints.
did a few test shots, and then settled for a composition and waited. For nearly 1 hour I sat in the clouds, winds blazing around me. But once the clouds broke, I was ready and could enjoy the view while snapping a few photos. There are also occasions where I don't have time for scouting, where I just show up minutes before sunset and race around location trying to find a composition. While this sometimes works and I find a good composition, I just can't enjoy the shoot as much because I'm so focused on finding the best viewpoint. What I like about landscape photography is being out in nature, enjoying the silence of a morning, listening to the waves crashing on the shore, or feeling the water rush around my feet when photographing a waterfall. If I'm in a rush because I didn't scout a location, those experiences get diminished. Now I want to show you some things I'm looking for when scouting. Most of the time, scouting happens in different light than to the magic light for which I usually plan a photo shoot. So the landscape looks different and I have to pre-visualize how it would look during sunset or sunrise in order to find compositions that work. First of all, it's essential to know where the sun will rise or set, and for this I use apps like Planet or Photographer's Ephemeris. If you want the sun in the frame, I can search for compositions in its direction. What I can't know yet is how the sky will look. For a clear sky, I often need another foreground than for a cloudy sky. So I make sure to look for different possible compositions. A clear sky works well with a clean foreground. If there's some reflective surface, this can work great. A dramatic sky needs something to balance it. Some sharp rocks or boulders, a rushing stream, in general patterns that could mimic what's happening in the sky. I can usually not find compositions for all possible outcomes, but if I can find just 2 or 3, this will already greatly improve my chances for a good photo later. And besides looking for compositions, as I said earlier, safety is also an important aspect. So when I plan a shoot at the coast, for example, besides looking for compositions, I also have a close look at how the sea behaves and how high the tides will go. I like to visit a place at high tide first to see if there are areas where I can get cut off when out taking photos. Because when the light is sweet, it's easy to forget about what's happening behind.
So I hope those examples showed you the importance of scouting, and yeah, if you don't already do so, make sure to plan in some more time on your next photo shoot. It will be totally worth it. And before I forget, I wish all of you a Merry Christmas. See you!